army rising in the land. Dead and dry bones coming back to life to fight again. They're riding on their holy horses made of chrome and steel. They're reaching all across the land to anyone who will. Receive a cup of water in the name of God's own Son. Take the time to listen to the reason why they've come. They once were dead and walking in the darkness of their sins, till Jesus came and set them free. Now they ride with Him. They ride with the passion. They ride with the wind. They carry in their hearts the only hope for every man. Through mountains and valleys, they'll ride until they come to the end of the journey. They're riding for the sun. United in a vision, our purpose and our plan is to go to every nation and reach out to every man. We've chosen to be servants of a great and higher call, as we give the praise and glory to the one who loves us all. We're an army full of soldiers who've been wounded in the past, but now we bear the banner of the cross upon our backs. No weapon formed against us will be able to prevail. We're riding straight to victory as we storm the gates of hell. We'll ride with the passion, we'll ride with the wind. We'll carry in our hearts the only hope for every man. Through mountains and valleys, we'll ride until we come to the end of the journey. We'll ride for all the children who are broken by disease. We ride for every prisoner who's lost the will to live. We ride to where the sons of darkness gather in the land. We ride to bring the light of hope and love to every man. We're riding for the soldiers who've given up their lives, all the lonely orphans who've now been left behind. We're riding for the freedom that's bought with sweat and blood. We're riding, 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 riding. We're riding, we're riding for the sun. We'll ride with the passion, we'll ride with the wind. We'll carry in our hearts the only hope for every man. Through mountains and valleys, we'll ride until we come to the end of the journey. To the end of the journey. To the end. We're riding for the sun.
Good morning. Here it is again. For the past 5 years, you've been hearing about the Christian Motorcyclists Association, and here we are again. Next weekend is going to be a big weekend for us with our annual Run for the Sun. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but I just want to kind of refresh your memory. Last year, we celebrated 50 years for the Christian Motorcyclists Association, and I know about 5 years ago, Jim Christie from our chapter spoke to the church here and talked a little bit about the history of the Christian Motorcyclists Association. I figured, well, 5 years, it's been long enough to maybe refresh your memory a little bit, maybe get a little deeper in some stories. I'm going to be talking a little bit about a book that was written by the son of the founder of the Christian Motorcycle Association called Riding the Crossroads. And it's basically the story about how his dad became involved with motorcycles and how the Christian Motorcycle Association developed and some of the things that that propelled it to where it is, that has convinced me that it was God's plan to put him in these places and to make the organization what it is today. You can go ahead and put Herb's picture up there for me here, Gordy. So this is Herbert, get it right, Heber Earl Herb Shreve. Herb Shreve at the time was an Assembly of God pastor in El Dorado, Arkansas. Around 1972-ish or so, he was very deeply involved with this church. They were living in a parsonage, and his son was 11, 12 years old, was in the kitchen working on a Sunday school lesson on a Saturday evening, and his son asked his dad, well, Dad, what's an allegory? And his father told him, well, an allegory is kind of like a fable or a story, that type of thing. And his son says, okay, Dad. And then his dad says, well, why are you asking me that? And Herbie, the son, says, well, the Sunday school lesson here says that the story of Jonah was an allegory about what happened to him. And Herb went over and grabbed the Sunday school book and looked at it and read it and said, well, basically they're saying the Bible's a fable. I can't stand for this. So Herb was a little angry about that, and there was a Assembly of God conference coming up, and he went to the conference, and he complained about how they're providing these books for the Sunday school classes, and he just didn't think that was right. Well, then, after that conference, about a week later, gets a knock on the door. Said, hello, Pastor Shreve. Said, we need to talk to you. It's the leadership from the church, and apparently they had taken a vote and decided that he was making waves and that he needed to leave his church because he was not doing the things the way they liked it. And Herb had no choice. He was given 2 weeks to move. And while that was going on, Herbie, the son, was overhearing this, became very angry, as Rocky and I talked this morning about 11, 12-year-olds, what they'll do. And Herb went into his bedroom, Herbie did, the son, got his baseball bat, and he came out and he was going to set the record straight. So his dad had to kind of deal with that a little bit. So without a church, Herb decided he would just go on the road and do evangelism. So he was just a traveling evangelist. He would be going for weeks at a time, going to various churches, various communities, going to events, filling in at churches here and there, that type of thing. So while he was away, Herbie's now starting to get older, and as teenage kids go, they get rebellious. And Herbie, when his dad got kicked out of the church, basically lost his faith in God and became a rebel for the most part. Didn't want to have anything to do with the church. He felt that God had defied him, and he was going to defy God, and he was just an angry child. And every time Herb would come home from his trips, their relationship had deteriorated to where they were grumbling and fighting and not being happy. And then about 1975-ish, Herb came home from one of his trips, and Herbie was in the living room when he got home, and his dad says, hey, Herbie, I'm home, and Herbie ignored him. Herbie went to his bedroom, slammed the door, just angry because he thought his dad had abandoned him. And he said something disrespectful to his mother. So Dad went to the bedroom to correct that problem. And it ended up that they got into a physical altercation. And Herbie, the son, thought he could just beat his dad up and take care of things. Well, he found out that his dad was a little bit more stronger and squared away than he was, so his dad ended up pretty much kicking his butt. And then he grabbed Herbie by the scruff of his neck, threw him in a car, and they drove off into the wilderness of Arkansas somewhere. And Herb just basically broke down and was saying, what can I do with you? What am I going to do with you? I can't have you being this way. So things got calmed down. Herbie went on to another trip, and while he's out driving about, Herb Sr. is thinking while he's driving about how good things were with him and his son, because they used to ride horses together. And he was wishing they could have things like it was back then, where they were very close and enjoyed their time together. And then he got this vision of, well, Herbie, the son, likes mini bikes and is kind of interested in motorcycles and stuff, so maybe there's something there I can get a motorcycle. It'd be something like a horse thing we could do. So the next time he came home, Herb got his son, and they went to the local motorcycle shop, and they bought 2 motorcycles. You can put the next slide, there it is, okay. He bought 2 Honda 750s, one for Herbie and one for Herb, and they proceeded to go out and about and ride, and Herb actually took to the motorcycle pretty easily, probably because of his horse experience maybe, I don't know, but he had never ridden a motorcycle before, but in the book, Herbie talks about how well he handled it and so forth. And then they are finding things to do together, so Herb, the father, says, well, they had these things called motorcycle rallies. I'd like to go see what those are all about, thinking that's going to be something they could do together, not knowing much about what it was. Herbie thought it was funny because he knew his dad, the preacher, wouldn't fit into a motorcycle rally at all. But anyway, they made plans to go to a rally, and they rode into Texas to a rally about 100 miles away or so forth. You can put the next slide. And when they rolled into the rally, this is kind of what I think they would have saw. Just a bunch of motorcyclists camped out in an open field. But the interesting part is that Herbie thought they were going to laugh him out of the place. But as it turned out, they welcomed him with open arms, and they actually found a nice spot for them to camp in. And they set up camp, and Herbie was enjoying seeing all the activity and so forth. And then he noticed that Herb had people coming to visit him. And his dad actually, right there, as they had finished that camp, had people coming in, and he started testifying with them. He started spreading the word to them. And Herb was just so impressed that he had these people who were pretty much not godly people, but there was an interest. And Herbie, the son, couldn't understand why that would be. And Herb wrote in one of the early issues of the Heartbeat magazine that they had back then. It was a newsletter, what his feelings were when that was going on. And he said that, when he saw all these people who were just out there wandering around, but when they gave him the opportunity, they wanted to talk about God, he said that Matthew 9:36 to 38 came to his mind. And that's the verse of the week, But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. So that was going in Herb's head, and Herb is a prayerful man, and he said, there needs to be somebody who can minister to these people. They need someone to bring them to the fold. But Herb wasn't interested in that. That wasn't his thing. He was happy being a traveling evangelist and going to churches all over the area and being involved with his church that way. So he kept, for the next few months, him and Herbie would go to these rallies. He would have the same experience, but he still didn't want to start anything official. Kept on praying for something to happen, but he would have a hard time falling asleep at night because he couldn't get off his mind. He'd get up and read the Bible, and almost every time he would take the Bible and just randomly open it to a chapter, and the Bible would open up to Romans 3:8, which says, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. The first couple times, Herb's like, well, why is this opening up all the time? And then he kept on going through his head. I have placed before you an open door. I have placed before you an open door. So he said, well, maybe this is what God wants. So he got together with some friends who had some organizational skills, and in 1975, you can put the next slide up, they formed the Christian Motorcyclists Association. As it turned out, they came across an abandoned little construction type shack, no running water or anything in it, close to the where they lived in Arkansas at the time. They had a person who was a friend of the family who wanted to get involved with this and actually put the money up to purchase that piece of land, and that was the beginning of the official national headquarters of the Christian Motorcyclists Association. But now this is 1975. Herb wasn't real comfortable doing this still, but the word was getting out, and he put an ad in a motorcycle magazine that for people who are interested in getting involved with the Christian Motorcycle Association. And Herb and his wife, who is also involved in this now, they would go out and do ministry at biker rallies and so forth. And one time they were away on one of these rallies, and they called home to talk to Herbie, the son. Said, how are things going there, Herbie? He said, well, things are fine, Dad, but your mailbox is full of these mails addressed to CMA. Well, by now Herb had forgotten that he'd actually put the ad in the magazine, because back then it took about a month for things to cycle through and get into the magazines. And Herb had forgotten about it. He said, well, I don't know what that's all about. Put return to sender on them and take them back to the post office. So Herbie packed it up, took them back to the post office. Next day, another mailbox full of mail from the CMA, and Herb called his son, and Herbie said, well, Dad, there's more of these CMA mails. And then the light bulb came on. Wait a second, that's CMA, that's that ad. He said, mailbox is full. I said, did you take the other ones back? Well, yeah, I did, Dad. But he said, well, don't take those back. And so they got back home, and his wife answered each of those personally, and the word was getting around that the CMA was out and about. Then he got a letter from a group in Arizona. It says, hey, have you open chapters for other motorcycle groups to do this? We got a group of us here that want to do that. Herb wasn't real excited about this, and he wrote back and said, well, no, we don't want to make this thing happen too big or too fast. We just want to kind of feel the waters and see how it goes. And Arizona writes back, so we're sorry, we've already started a chapter here. And Herb's like, well, okay, that's God's will, I guess. And then throughout that period, they started having more chapters just organically forming. There was no effort to organize them. It's just he would get a letter, hey, we're in so-and-so, we want to form a chapter. What number are we going to be, that type of thing. And they ran the Christian Motorcycle Association with chapters, with keeping records in a shoebox, basically, is how they were operating. So the Christian Motorcycle Association continued to grow. And then the following year, in 1976, they decided, well, the biggest motorcycle event in the world is the Sturgis Rally in Sturgis, South Dakota. And in the book, Herbie compares it to Sodom and Gomorrah. And I was reminded of, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Rocky, Caesarea Philippi. But anyway, it's Sodom and Gomorrah are big cities. I see Caesarea Philippi as being maybe a smaller, more concentrated area like you would have at a rally, but the things that are happening at motorcycle rallies are pretty much unspeakable. And you let your mind wander, and it's probably happened at a motorcycle rally. So Herb goes to this rally with his wife and his son, and they go there and they put them in a local park, which you no longer can camp in, but they're camping in this park. And his wife had made a banner that had the Christian Motorcyclists Association on it, do you need prayer type thing, put it up above their campsite, and all was well and good until nighttime fell and everybody had plenty of liquor and they're in their tents trying to settle in, and all of a sudden all these groups of outlaw bikers show up outside in their little area under the banner, and they start having a make-believe church service. And Herbie mentions how they knew a lot of these songs, so they'd been to a church long enough to hear what the music was, but they made their own words for them, and they weren't words that you'd want to sing in a church. You can kind of get the feeling for that. They were there for several days. They would sleep with their clothes on because they were afraid every night that something would happen, that they would have to gather everything and run for their lives, because it was, threats were being made. It was noisy. It was just not a good place to be. Herb thought maybe he should not have brought his kids at all. He probably should have just came by himself, or maybe should not have even been there. But then the rest of the people that was with him, there's another couple that went with the CMA, and they said, this is why we're here. This is Satan trying to stop us. So they stayed through it, and when the event ended, they were packing things up. And one of these bikers, who was like the ringleader of all this negative stuff, was called Bear. And Bear come up and talked to him and said, well, preacher, you're going to go back to your church now, right? Herb says, no, I don't have a church. So this is what I do. And Bear says, what do you mean? A preacher without a church, what's that all about? And Herb says, no, this is what God has called me to do, to try to get the message out to people that have not heard about what Jesus is like, and that Jesus loves you. And he said, Bear kind of softened up a little bit, and he said, well, okay. He said, could I ask you a favor, preacher? Could I have that banner? Herb's like, well, I guess. I mean, his wife kind of made it. He checked with her. She said, well, if they asked for it, there's a reason for it. So they folded up the banner and gave it to Bear, and didn't think much more of it. Figured it would probably end up in a trash somewhere or turned into rags or whatever. But then about 3 years later or so, a package arrives in the mail at their house in Arizona, and in it is the banner with a little bit of some singeing on the edges of it, and a note from Bear that says, "Dear friends, I hope you remember me. You gave me this banner at Sturgis a few years ago, and it meant an awful lot to me. It would be hard to tell you how much. Well, anyway, a few days ago, my house burned down. I almost lost everything I had, but I did manage to save the banner, and I thought you might want it back. I'm trying to live for Jesus, but it's not always easy. Pray for me." Signed, Bear. So another miracle has come out of that. So moving on a little bit, Herbie, the son, met a girl in a town where they had moved to, because they were still moving around a little bit because of the ministry purposes his dad was doing. And this girl he met had prayed that she would marry a preacher someday. But somehow she took a liking to Herbie, and several chapters in the book explain how she managed to convert Herbie around to where he became a believer. And Herbie actually went on to become a minister in Texas. Went through Bible college, was enjoying doing his ministry work. Didn't really want to get that involved with the Christian Motorcyclists Association, but he had a motorcycle still enjoyed his bikes. He would still do some stuff with them, but he never did want to take it on as a full-time thing. But eventually Herbie did decide it's time to go and become basically a staff person for the Christian Motorcyclists, and he was out doing the ministry like his dad was. He just didn't take charge of it. His dad was still the boss, but Herbie was bitten by the bug, and he was on board with the Christian Motorcyclists Association. So the Christian Motorcyclists Association grew from there, and like I say, there's several stories in that book I could share with you, but fast forward to where we are today. What started with one chapter in Arizona now has 1,452 chapters in the world, and over 182,000 members of the Christian Motorcyclists Association. So you see on the map here, the only country that does not have any CMA presence is Iceland, and we've probably all heard recently how Iceland is not much of a country for population anyway. It's a little cold to ride motorcycles up there, I guess. But everywhere in the world, every place you see red on there, there are actually physical chapters, and everything that has the yellow is where the CMA has reached out to in one way or the other. So, moving on to about 1987, kind of change gears here. Herbie's now working for the CMA. He's out riding his motorcycle on a dreary, crappy, rainy day, and he's thinking about things, and he says in the book that God's talking to him. He keeps on seeing a vision of motorcycles, looking at the globe from like out in space and seeing just motorcycles going all over the world. And it's like they're stars and stuff are coming up in these nations, and he's thinking, well, is God trying to tell me something? And then he's starting to think, well, do we want to move this thing outside of the USA? At the time, they had pretty much been in America. So he got the vision that maybe we need to expand the Christian Motorcyclists Association to do a worldwide ministry. Went home, and after that trip, met with his dad. He said, hey, Dad, I've got this idea, and I just don't know what to do with it. Well, Herb, the father, said, you know, son, I've kind of had the same idea, and I think we're being told to do something. So basically, Herb got a napkin out, wrote down some notes, and he came up with the Run for the Sun as a fundraiser to support the ministry of God around the world. And they started in 1987. And if you want to go ahead and run the video now, Gordy will talk about the Run for the Sun.
Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. How can they call on Him to be saved unless they believe in Him?
And how can they believe in Him if they have never heard about Him? And how can they hear about Him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? Focusing primarily, but not exclusively, to motorcyclists, CMA members actively seek out opportunities to serve and let the light of Jesus shine through them. Annually, CMA members expose more than 2 million people to the gospel message, directly ministering to more than 724,327 people in the United States alone, many of those accepting Christ. If you know someone who rides a motorcycle, chances are CMA has or will present the gospel message to them. Run for the Sun is the Christian Motorcyclists Association's investment into evangelizing, equipping, and training the motorcyclists of this nation and worldwide, strengthening the persecuted church, equipping and training pastors and leaders in ministry, and providing the opportunity for people to hear the words of Jesus in their own language. CMA keeps 40%, which we use to reach out to bikers and others throughout the United States and around the world. Based only on the reported numbers, each year, a CMA member in the United States leads someone to Christ once every 80 minutes, prays with or ministers to a need once every 44 seconds, prays the prayer of recommitment with someone once every 87 minutes. That means a CMA member in the United States somehow touches someone for Jesus every 44 seconds. That's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. 20% of the money raised is used to support the work of the Jesus Film Project. The Jesus Film has been translated into more than 2,225 languages and shown in 225 countries. Historically, for every dollar CMA invests in the Jesus Film, approximately 10 people see the film somewhere in the world, and at least one accepts Christ. Using these estimates, the support provided through Run for the Sun has allowed more than 213 million people to view the film, with some 21 million of those making decisions for Christ. These decisions are a direct result of CMA's Run for the Sun. 20% of the total raised is used to provide transportation. Working through Missionary Ventures International, CMA has placed 9,877 motorcycles, 7,607 bicycles, boats, horses, wheelchairs, buggies, snowmobiles, and camels to pastors working in 115 countries. CMA has provided transportation to more than 16,000 pastors, evangelists, teachers, and Christian leaders, enabling them to do their part to fulfill the Great Commission. This is a direct result of CMA's Run for the Sun. 20% goes to Global Christian Relief, supporting their efforts to promote the gospel in countries where being a Christian can get you locked up or killed. Through our involvement with Global Christian Relief, CMA supports and strengthens suffering believers by providing Bibles and gospel development resources, by supporting the advancement of women and children, and through Christian community restoration efforts. Over the life of Run for the Sun, more than 3.7 million Bibles have been distributed to support persecuted believers all around the globe. The Scriptures make it clear that every Christian is expected to participate in spreading the gospel. CMA's Run for the Sun is a place where you can invest and know that you are participating in something that will result in someone's life being changed. On the first Saturday in May, CMA members across the United States will participate in Run for the Sun. You can touch someone, somewhere in the world for Christ, but the choice is yours. Will you support CMA's Run for the Sun?
I don't speak about this to beg for money. I know we all have hard times, but it's just, it bears sharing that I'm excited about what the CMA does in the world. And the numbers they mentioned on there are just phenomenal if you think about it. Did you notice the motorcycles in the very beginning of that video, that bunches of them in the street, parked all over the place? That's Sturgis. And that's just a thumbnail of how big that thing is. So I just want to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. I always like using a $5 bill. Just say, if you can spare $5, that would be great. Because with $5, what happens is 2 of those dollars goes directly to motorcycle ministry for the Christian Motorcyclists Association. And that doesn't pay for salaries, that doesn't pay for facility maintenance for the headquarters, and it's a large campground now they have. But it's to provide means of getting the word out to the motorcycle community of the good news of Jesus and how to change their lives. Part of that is they produce some flyers, some tracts that I put a few of them back on the table there by the water jug. If you want to pick up one, feel free to take it with you. It just gives us a nice tool. If nothing else, we can hand something out to somebody, and if they read it, it might get a message off to them. If they don't, you never know, they may set it down somewhere else and it might touch somebody. So that $2 goes to that. $1 goes to Missionary Ventures, and that's the organization that provides the motorcycles and snowmobiles, and they always like talking about the camels that they provide. Another $1 goes to the Global Christian Relief, and that's kind of timely right now because we've been watching on the news of things happening in Iran where they are hanging people and chopping their heads off because they're Christians. And Iran is not the worst place in the world for that type of activity. There are some nations in Africa where it is 10 times as bad. That people are just being drug out of their houses and shot in the head because they're Christians. That's the only thing they've done. And then the one that my personal favorite is the Jesus Film Project, which has now translated the story of Jesus in a video in 124 languages. And as best I know by now, it should have covered all languages that are known in the world to where they can reach people to show them that video. And for every $1 that is given to the Jesus Film Project, 10 people will see the movie and learn about Jesus. And of those 10, 1 will be saved and will follow Christ. So, Herb Street Sr. passed away in October 2011. And there's been several directors who have held his spot since then. John Ogden Sr. is who our current director is. And this Saturday is May 2nd is our Run for the Sun. That's the only fundraiser that the CMA does. It's going to be our ride for the Akron chapter of the Righteous Riders. We'll start at the Southeast Harley-Davidson shop in Bedford outside of Cleveland. We're going to be doing bike blessings around 9:30, and then at 10 o'clock we plan on leaving from there. And we'll spend the day on our bikes. We have lunch reservations at a place up in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park area, and then we'll be riding through the parks, I'm sure. Try to put in 100 miles. The weather is looking like it's not going to be raining, maybe a little chilly, but we'll take it because last year it rained very hard. We would say we did our run for the sun in cages last year. That's what we call cars. So with that, let's have a prayer here. Father God, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to my family here at the church today and to share some more news and some more stories about how the Christian Motorcyclists Association has come to be. We ask that you give your favor to them as they go to the Run for the Sun this year, and that the money that they raise will further your efforts around the world as you've desired it to happen. We pray that you watch over us today as we continue on with our lives this week, and we thank you for the weather changing and the things that are growing back to life, just like we expect to see the people in the motorcycle community growing back to life with you. We ask for all these things in your holy name. Amen.